That's all this is. Good.
Good morning, Judge. Thank you. Morning, Dan. I think when we left off yesterday, we were talking a little bit about your first meeting with the FBI. You had covered your military service from 2004 to 2010. You also went through the vetting process on wire, and you talked about your contact with Dave Ramirez from Mount Morris Township Police Department. The meeting with the FBI, you said you met in Flint, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and when you met with Special Agents Impla and Chambers, I think you mentioned that you had to meet out in the parking lot in your vehicle, is that right?
That's correct.
And again, that was because of COVID, is that correct? Okay. Tell me about that meeting. How did it start out?
Just an introduction to who they were, who I was, and then handing the phone over so they could see the conversation that was happening.
Okay, this is your phone, is that correct?
That's correct.
And by this time, your phone had the application wire on it, is that right?
You did, yes.
And you, I think, told us yesterday that you had been admitted into the main chat for the Wolverine Watch, is that correct?
I was, yes.
Very good. When you met with the FBI there, I mean, did they tell you that you had to turn your phone over, or?
No.
Tell me a little bit about how that happened.
I just wanted them to see the concerns that I had, why I reached out to my friend, and to see the conversation that was happening in real time.
Okay. Did the special agents go through your phone?
They did.
Okay. Did you see them take any pictures of your phone?
They did, yes.
Okay. Did you try to screen capture anything either before meeting with the special agents, or save what was on your phone before you met with the FBI?
I did, yes.
Okay. Tell the jury what happened when you tried to do that.
So the initial message of them wanting to do he wanted to do a reverse red flag. I tried doing a screen capture of that, and the security settings that were enabled said that it was. I didn't want to risk the chance of doing it again. I didn't know if it alerted them, kind of like Snapchat. If you do a screen capture of a conversation or a picture, it alerts the sender that you have done that. So I didn't want to risk it again if it had done it or not.
Okay. And the message that you're talking about here about the reverse red flag that Pete wanted to do on police officers' homes, was that message available when you sat down, or not sat down, but when you met with the FBI at the office out in the park?
No, it wasn't.
How come?
You can, as an administrator on the various windows that work through wiring, you can set the length of time that the message would disappear. So you go up to a month, 3 weeks, a week, and 24 hours. And those conversations were set for 24 hours.
Okay, so is this like a self-deleting function from wire?
It is, yes.
Okay. You didn't know any of these individuals, I say these individuals, you see a chart to your right there, is that correct?
I do, yes.
And do you recognize, the people in that chart?
I do.
Okay, and how did you meet them?
Face-to-face interactions,
In what setting?
training at the Munith property.
Are they all Wolverine watchmen?
They are, yes.
Okay, and did they all come in on every day, or are they coming and going in different times of the training?
They would come and go during different times of training.
Okay, after the special agents looked at your phone, about how long did that take for them to go through your phone?
We might have been together for a half hour, maybe. I'm not exactly sure on the amount of time.
Okay, and when they're going through your phone, do they have any requests of you at that point in time?
At that point, I believe they wanted me to come back the following day.
Okay,
For further up. So I was kind of in a build up that they might be asking me to stay within the group, kind of mulling that over.
that dawned upon you on your own, is that correct?
They did, yes.
Okay, did you agree to meet with them again?
I did.
About how much time goes by before you meet with them the second time?
The following day.
Okay, Where does that meeting take place?
So I get in the parking lot in my vehicle.
Okay, you still, again, with Special Agent Impola and Chambers?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know either of them before this?
No.
Okay. When you meet with them the second day, tell us about that meeting.
And it was again to go through the phone. Again, I handed the phone over to them. They asked me if I would stay within the group as a like-minded individual, as a source for them.
Okay. Had you ever done anything like that before in your life?
No.
Okay. You indicated, I think, a few minutes ago that when you thought about it, you anticipated they might ask you to do that, right?
There was a reason for them to want me to come back.
Sure.
So I was just kind of speculating what it might be, and it was confirmed when they asked.
Okay. I mean, when you met with them the first time, did you think, I might get signed up as a source?
No, I thought I was just going to be handing it off and showing them the context of what was happening, and I would just go on my way.
Okay. And during the second meeting, do they ask you to stay in the group?
They do, yes.
Okay. You have a family,
I do.
okay? I think you said you were born and raised in Genesee County, right?
That's correct.
Okay. The idea of staying within the group, I mean, how did that hit you?
It was very uneasy. I was concerned for the overall safety of my family, but I felt that I was in a unique position to prevent or delay and monitor what was going on for the FBI when they asked me if I would be a source.
I mean, did you agree to do it?
I did.
Tell us why.
That there was a substantial threat against law enforcement, so the preservation of life is what I was looking to see.
Okay. They give you any instructions at that point about what to do?
Just be eyes and ears within the group, and
Okay.
to maintain accessibility for them.
Okay. And I think you told us earlier, you had not been a source for any law enforcement agency before this, right?
I have not known.
I mean, did you think you were gonna hit some big payday by doing this?
Absolutely not.
Okay, did you ask for any money?
No.
Okay. Any other instructions you can remember coming from that meeting?
I think from that meeting, no.
Okay.
Later on, it was, not to help out or assist. I believe the verbiage for that.
Okay. In terms of, I mean, was the idea of coming up with original thoughts or plans discussed?
Yes,
Okay, tell me about that.
I was not to do that.
Okay. And in terms of communicating with the FBI and, Special Agents Chambers and Impola, I mean, was there any instructions about like when you should report in or anything like that?
I think up until I gave them the accessibility of the wire, so the username, password, so they can monitor that. We were trying to go weekly, but with the settings that was employed on the app where it would fall off, we would do it sooner.
Okay. Did you give them your username and password to the Wire app that you were on?
I did, yes.
Okay, did that happen at the second meeting or when did that happen?
I'm not sure the exact date.
Okay. How about, did you have a personal Facebook page back then?
I did, yes.
And I think you told us yesterday that the way that you found the Wolverine Watchman was you were on your Facebook. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, did you give Special Agent Impola the access to your Facebook page?
I did, yes.
Username and password?
That's correct.
Okay. During the entire span of your involvement here in this investigation, did anybody from the FBI post anything on their own to your Facebook page?
No.
Did anybody from the FBI post anything on the Wire chat?
No, they did not.
Okay, was it explained to you why that wasn't going to be done?
It did, yes.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, the overall concept of me being me, no one knows how I talk. It would, so they can't contribute to the conversation. the overall state of.
All right, tell me if you will, when is the first time you meet the three defendants here? Do you remember the date?
I think it was March 22nd.
Okay, same month that you met with the FBI?
Yes,
And this would be approximately a week after meeting them?
that's fair to say.
Okay. And tell the jury, I mean, about this meeting with the defendants. Where did it happen?
At the Munith resident here in Jackson.
Okay. Had you ever been there before?
No,
Can you tell us how you knew where to go?
the address was put out over the Wired app for the training event that was being held there.
Okay. And was there any description about what the training was going to be and what equipment to bring, that kind of thing?
It would be like training, rifle training, and to bring like your kids, so body armor, your primary weapon, so a rifle, and a secondary for a pistol.
Okay. And did you do that?
I didn't.
Okay. About what time of the day did you arrive there?
Maybe around 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay. And when you got there, of the defendants, which defendants, how many of the defendants were there, if any?
The three of them were.
Okay. And did you come to learn whose property this was?
I did.
Whose property is it?
Joe Morrison's.
Who lives there with him?
So
Okay, and other people live there too, is that correct?
that's correct.
And small children included,
Yes.
okay? And tell us about your arrival there. I mean, this is the first time that you're actually meeting face to face, is that right?
It is, yes.
And tell us about how that goes.
When I first arrived there, everybody already had their body armor and kit. Vehicle I too put was.
Okay, you met Joe Morrison there, right?
I didn't.
Met Pete Musico and also Paul Bellar, is that correct?
Correct.
Were they all in full kit for the training?
They were.
Okay, they have two, their long gun and their sidearm?
Correct.
Okay, about how many people went there that day?
Between 8 and 10. I'm not exactly sure on the exact numbers.
Okay, and tell us what happened once everybody arrived and it gathered.
There was a little briefing on what was going on. No phones were allowed to be out during the training area. We move over just to the left of the house and got online like a firing line and practice to fire drills, bringing your rifle up, switching from safe to fire, simulating training, lowering the weapon back down. We also did that with like left face movements and right face movements, presenting threats. So the person would give out commands as to threat, and you would bring the rifle or your pistol up and simulate engaging that.
Okay, who was teaching at this point in time?
Paul Beller.
Okay, and tell us about what Joe was doing during this training.
He was on the fire line as well, and also giving an input on how to bring the rifle up in various communications.
Okay, how about Pete Musico? What did he do during the training?
He was training
And what do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
on the firing line as well as other like how I was.
Okay. I think you told us yesterday that when you were on the Facebook communing with Mr. Bellar, you explained your service in the United States Army at that point in time. Is that correct?
I did, yes, briefly.
And that's before you got into the wire chat, right?
Correct.
Okay. And when you say briefly, I mean, what did you say about, what your experience was?
That I was a firearms instructor, and I might have, some things to bring to the table as far as training.
Okay. Did you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you also indicated that you were a U.S. Army veteran in the initial communication.
Yes.
Okay. And and those facts were out there when you arrived at the Munith property for the first time. Fair summary?
Yes.
Okay. And when you got there, did you notice anything when you arrived that had to do with an American flag?
I did, yes.
Okay, what did you see?
At the property, they had the American flag displayed, but it was upside down as a signal of distress.
Okay. Do you have any American flag on any of the items that you were wearing that day?
I did. I had a small IR, so patch, the numeric patch that I wore while I was with Iraq. So I had that on the center portion of my body armor.
Okay, I'm gonna show you, it's been marked as proposed exhibit 21 here. Does that look familiar to you?
It does, yes.
Okay, what is that?
That is the American flag.
Okay, and is that what you saw the first time you went to the Munith Dunn Road property train in March of 2020?
It is, yes.
Okay, move for its submission, Judge.
Any objection?
I have no objection.
No objection.
Okay.
21's
Put
admitted.
that, Up, please, Adam, thank you. Okay, did Pete Musico make any suggestions about how to change your attire that day?
Did I should either pass upside down to make a copy of that, or we move it off the side?
What was your understanding about what an upside down flag is?
Briefly, that it's a signal of distress, so.
Okay, did you agree to go ahead and turn your flag upside down?
I did not turn it upside down, no.
Okay. While you were there that day, did you have an occasion to speak with Mr. Musico about any arrests that had occurred in his life prior to meeting?
Yes,
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
that he had interaction with law enforcement, and that he later obtained that officer's location where he lived, and that he threw a Mocktail cocktail on the property, waited for him on the backside of his.
Okay, is that Joe Morrison or is that Pete Musico?
Speakings ago.
Okay, and if I misspoke, I apologize. Okay, and that was information that Mr. Musico gave to you the first day you met him?
It was relatively early on. I'm not exactly sure the day, but yes.
Okay. How about Mr. Morrison? Did he discuss with you anything about his previous contact with law enforcement?
He did, yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
He explained that one of the reasons for him starting the group was because of interaction that he had with a police officer where he was stopped, charged for a CCW charge for possession of a firearm.
Okay. Did you bring that up or did Mr. Morrison bring that up?
He brought that up.
Okay, and is this the first day you met him?
Yes.
Okay. In discussing it with him, I mean, did you get a feeling like Mr. Morrison was okay with what had happened?
No.
Okay, tell us about that.
Just the overall, the conversation was going up, the reason for him starting the group, the contents of what was going on within the group, that he had hatred towards police.
Okay. Did he feel like the situation with his arrest for the weapon, did he feel like at the end, I'm okay with what happened?
Fair to say, yes.
I mean, did he ever talk about this again?
It may have been brought up. I'm not exactly sure on the number of times.
Did he, if you remember, did he bring it up in other times during the time that you knew him?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give the jury a rough idea of how many times Mr. Morrison brought up the CCW?
Might have been
Objection, Your Honor. This has been asked and answered. He's already testified. He doesn't know how many times it was brought up. So if we're going to ask again, how many times was it brought up? We've already heard that he said a minute ago, he does not remember.
Any response?
Not sure that's what his testimony was, Judge. And I think the question I asked was a little different. The time that you knew him, how many times you remember?
over the time, numerous times. The exact number, I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. Was he happy about the CCW situation?
No.
Okay. How long does the training last this first day you go there?
Maybe a couple hours. I wasn't really keeping track of time.
Okay, and tell us about how it ends. I mean, how do you leave and, you know, like, what's your discussion with Mr. Morrison at this point?
Inevitably, they asked if I would be willing to join the leadership portion of the group.
This is the first time you've been there, is that correct?
It is, yes.
Okay, and you've explained to them your military service, is that correct? Did you talk about that at all, or did they ask you about it while you were there the first day?
Combination of both going through the vetting portion. I told them that I've seen direct combat action in Iraq, that I've been in numerous gunfights, that I was an instructor here in the civilian world. And then with Paul teaching the reflexive fire course of action, piggybacked off of some of the things that he said and how to move so people weren't putting a lot of tension on their lower halves, like the legs, extremities, when they're reacting to the threat commands.
Okay. They invited you to become part of leadership, I think you just said, is that correct?
They did, yes.
Okay. And what was your response to that?
I agreed to it.
Okay, and who invited you to be part of leadership?
It was discussed amongst their leadership that they had there. So Joe, Paul, and Ty. But it was Joe that asked me to join the leadership group there.
Okay, I mean, did he describe at all when he asked you about this, like what your role or responsibilities would be as part of the leadership group?
At that initial time, no, it was just joining the leadership.
Okay.
It developed into helping Paul assist with the tactical training.
Okay. Tell us, you mentioned about being on the firing line during this training, the first one you went to. Was there any other talk of training, or rather, was there any other training done besides that while you were
There was a very limited portion of ambush training. It's like an L-shaped ambush.
there? Okay. Who led that?
Paul did as well.
Okay, and just give us the rough parameters of what that training taught.
So you would be laying down, so in a prone position, and you would simulate shooting at a perpendicular angle, and then we call it peeling off. So one person would get up and run behind the other individuals. And Paul was instructing them to kick the foot of the individual to let them know that they were moving. And then once you got ahead of the line, you would again lay down as well. So you're moving this bush along.
Okay. Besides the firing line and the L ambush that you just described, was there anything else practiced during this training?
Limited medical, but that's from that particular day. Is what I can recall from that.
Who taught the medical that you remember?
Paul did as well.
Okay. Can you give the jury some idea of what techniques were taught during this medical portion of the training?
So for that, throughout the course too, it's a self-aid, buddy aid. So if you could treat yourself, you would. So if you had an arterial bleed, you would apply a tourniquet to whatever limb that is. Organizing your IFAC, your personal medical supplies. And then for your buddy aid, if it was simulating like a sucking chest wound, so got for torso, how to apply pressure to that, Israeli bandages, pressure wraps, that nature of training.
Okay. During the training, do you remember Mr. Musico talking at all about one of his neighbors?
I do, yes.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about that?
That one of the neighbors surrounding the residence there was a prepper, and he was also a reloader. And that when the boog would kick off, they would go to his residence, kill him, and retrieve his equipment that he has there.
Okay. Had you ever heard of the Boogaloo before meeting members of the Wolverine Watchmen?
No,
Okay, and tell the jury how you were first introduced to this idea.
through the group on their interpretation of what the Boogaloo is, so kicking off a second civil war.
And that's how it was described to you, they're kicking off the Second Civil War.
Yes,
Okay. After the first meeting, I think you told us a little earlier that Mr. Musico was talking about something to do with a Molotov cocktail. Is that right?
that's correct.
Okay. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
That he had targeted a police officer with the intention of killing him,
Did he say why he did that?
resulting in some kind of contact that he had with the police officer.
Okay. Do you remember anything more about what the contact was?
No, just his actions to it is what really stuck with me.
Okay. Can you tell us, is that the only training you went to out on Dunn Road in Munith?
No, I went to several others.
When's the next one that you remember going to?
Shortly after the exact date, I'm not.
Would it have been in the same month or a different month in March 2020?
Might have been the 30th.
Okay. You drove there, is that correct?
Did.
Can you tell the jury how you knew to go there and that there would be a training?
That it was put out through the wire on the main Wolverine Watchman page.
Okay. And in between these two trainings that you attended, did you communicate at all with Special Agents Impola and Chambers?
I did, yes.
Okay. And what did you tell them?
The training would be being hosted again at the Munith property.
Did you tell them anything about the first training you went to?
I did, yes.
Okay. What directions did you receive from them about going to the second training?
That I would not be able to train them on specific things, just be like a safety officer on that.
Okay.
And Your Honor, at this point, I have no objection to what he's testifying to. I have no objection to what he's saying, but I would just ask the prosecutor, he's saying they, if it's they, fine, but if he knows specifically who's actually putting out on wire, hey, here's training and.
He'll try and name the individuals if possible.
I didn't hear you, Judge. I'm sorry.
Try and name the individuals if possible.
No problem. Thank you. So I think what I was asking you was, did you get any instructions from Special Agent Impola and Chambers about whether to go to the next training?
Yes, I would to go.
Okay. And besides, I think you just told us that they told you you could help if asked. Is that right?
Yes.
Fair summary?
And again, Your Honor, who's they? Is it, did he get a message from someone directly or was all three of them telling him this?
He just,
That's all I'm asking.
We're talking about the FBI.
I know.
Oh, I'm
He
sorry.
just named two FBI agents.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Judge. And I think you just summarized for us that you were told not to necessarily lead anything. Is that right?
Anything that was easily available, so either through YouTube or kind of public knowledge. No, like trade craft secrets or specialized.
Okay. So you go, is that correct?
Yes.
And again, about what time of the day do you arrive?
Good afternoon.
Okay. Is Joe Morrison there?
Yes.
Pete Musico?
Yes.
Paul Bellar? Tell the jury how you knew to go to this training. I think I asked you that a minute ago before the objection, but tell us about, how did you know to go there on the second occasion?
I was put out through Joe, like the time and location to show up at his residence for training.
Okay. And when you get there, are all three defendants on the property?
They are, yes.
And again, how many other members of the Wolverine Watchmen show up for this training?
About the same amount.
Okay. When you get there, what's the first thing you remember happening?
Again, they were all kind of conjugated out by their vehicles, body armor on.
Okay. Why don't you tell the jury a little bit about the training that was practiced on the second occasion you went?
So more, Paul always had people come through the and do like low crawl to see how your magazine pouches would stay if any magazines were to fall out, just basically like a shakedown of your gear to make sure everything was fully equipped. Some more reflexive fire drills and movement. So now we're not bounding, but we're moving online with each other.
What does that mean when you're bounding? Why would you do that? Why would you want to practice that?
So it would be as you're like assaulting forward on an element, you would have individuals go forward and you're sustaining fire for them. And then you would go up to their location and then advance further. So you're kind of like, think of it like walking. Your left foot would be an individual. So they advance forward, they get in place, and then your right foot would go forward. So that would be another person, all right? So you're advancing forward or assaulting forward on it.
Who introduced the idea of practicing this kind of skill that day?
Those were through Paul.
Okay. And did he teach this?
He did, yes.
Okay. Tell us what other type of things were practiced that day by the group?
We briefly got into to room clearing, so mount training, and
Okay.
setting up a simulated structure of walls so you can easily move them down. You can use it from shovels to simulate the walls, but you could use tape, any kind of structure to identify where a wall would be, corners, and easily move the structure around. You didn't have to put drywall up or anything.
tell the jury a little bit why knowing where walls and doors are in a room clearing exercise might be important.
For what kind of,
Well, you described that they had a diagram or, a floor plan set up on the ground for a height plan for a structure, right?
Right.
Am I correct about that?
yeah, so you can, so when you're going to it, it's basically confined to that. So you don't have an open plane. We have walls here, so there's simulated structure on. I couldn't go any further than this wall. Clear this corner and then come down and clear the rest of the room. So it's making a three-dimensional object for you.
Okay, and is this something that you did in your service with the United States Army?
I did, yes.
Okay. So you've got the room clearing, correct? Yes, practice. I think you said low crawl, is that right?
Yes,
Bounding,
yes.
okay? And are these things that you were taught and you learned in your service in the military?
They are, yes.
Okay. In terms of your role that day, can you tell the jury a little bit about what role you took on that day?
I assisted Paul in the training. He was leading the course of action for everything. The biggest thing that I kind of interjected on was the way he was having people doing their ambushes techniques. And it wasn't trying to further him on, hey, do this. The fact that he was having people kick an individual while they were moving, I was looking at the overall safety. So we're going to like live fire and we're simulating training. The last thing you want to do is kind of kick somebody while you're moving because you can trip. And I explained to them, you know when outcoming rounds are going and you know where incoming rounds are going. And when that volley of fire stops from looking across the area where we're firing, I know that people are moving. I don't need to person.
Okay, you mentioned a little bit earlier about the role of safety officer. Can you tell me how that related to you and how you took on that role?
Kind of, furthermore on the ambush, I was looking at a safety standpoint. If we're manipulating firearms and we go to live fire again, you don't want to be having a live round in the chamber and you hit somebody tripping. You have negligent discharge. So somebody shooting themselves or potentially somebody else.
Okay. During the second training, was the governor's address discussed at all?
I'm not exactly sure on the date that was brought up, but yes, obtaining the address was talked about.
Fair enough. Do you remember who talked about that? Okay, Pete Musico?
He did, yes.
Okay, and tell us what Mr. Musico, what his statements were about the governor's address.
So he can show up on her front yard, protest.
Okay, did he have the governor's address at that point?
I don't think he did. Yeah, he was searching for it. Him and Ty were talking. Ty was given, he asked for the phone number and Ty gave him the number for it. And Ty was telling him that this is not something you want to be saying over the phone. It's what you're wanting to say. As far as like, Pete was very angry with the governor.
Did he say why he was angry with the governor?
I think now we're ramping up into the COVID restrictions and the lockdowns, so he was voicing on those.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more about his level of anger with Governor Whitman.
A lot. He was there was nothing good was coming out of his mouth about the governor.
Okay, was that the only time this occasion that you're describing for us now that you heard Pete Musico talk about the governor in a negative way?
No,
Okay.
that was echoed out through the entire duration.
Okay. I think you told us a little bit ago about was there any discussion about limiting communications online?
Yes, they wanted to keep their Facebook presence, so anything on a social forum that anybody could see, they want to limit that and keep everything directly on wire or in person.
Okay. Whose idea was that?
It bounced around between Pete and Joe.
Okay. Were those ideas communicated to the other Wolverine Watchman members?
Over the course of time, yes, it was put out through Overwatch main page, so performing OPSEC is what they were wanting to do.
Tell me a little bit about your understanding of what OPSEC is.
Operational security. So from one of the reasons why I contacted my friend, seeing that they were informing that from the very get-go. They put a post out on training on the main forum, so anybody could see that. And then you're going through a vetting process, so they're selecting who they want to come into this group. It wasn't just open for anybody to come through. So that vetting process is like layer one of OPSEC.
And I think you indicated that they moved to an encrypted platform. Is that right?
The Wire app, yes.
Okay. Okay, let's, I want to stop here for a minute. You've done a couple of trainings with them, right?
I have,
Okay, and you're there at the request of the FBI, right?
yes.
I mean, had you ever done anything like this before in your life?
No.
And what are you thinking after you've met these guys a couple of times and you see what's going on and you see what they're talking about?
That they're committed to committing acts on people.
Okay. You said that you were in real action in Iraq, correct?
I was,
Okay. I mean, did you see your attendance at these events as being risky at all to your own welfare?
absolutely.
Okay. Okay. I mean, how did that make you feel?
Very uneasy. There's only one person in there. So myself is maintaining accessibility for the FBI. And the numbers varied from 8 to 15 individuals that were wanting to kill law enforcement. So if I was ever compromised, I'm working with law enforcement. So it would not be a good day for myself.
And yet you continued on, is that right?
I did.
Why?
I was in a unique position to delay or stop with working with the FBI on acts of violence against law enforcement that are essentially Americans, so your neighbors.
Okay. About how long before you go to the next training?
I was into the next month, the exact day.
April of 2020?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you go to any protests in April of 2020?
I did
How many?
several.
Okay. Tell me about the first one you went to.
I think that was the Operation Gridlock.
Okay.
So initial meeting up with the individuals, he had told me that he had a grenade inside of his vehicle. So that was very alarming. They're exercising their Second Amendment rights, so I encourage people to exercise not only your First Amendment, you're at a protest, but your Second Amendment. Intentionally, what they were wanting to do with their Second Amendment is what alarmed me throughout this entire thing.
Okay. Where do you go to with this protest?
The Capitol, here in
How
Michigan.
do you know to go to this? Like, what is it? I mean, would you have gone on your own, independent of, you've never met anybody from the Wolverine Watchman? I mean, is that something you would have shown up at on your own?
No,
Okay, so how did you know to go there then?
it was put out through the Wire app through Joe. There would be a protest.
Okay, did he ask people to attend from the Wolverine Watchman?
He did
Okay, and why did you go?
maintain an accessibility for the FBI and their intentions of what they're wanting to do with law enforcement.
Okay, you go down to Lansing,
I did.
and how are you dressed when you get there?
So I'm dressed down. I had like a police on. I'm carrying a pistol with extra magazines, all cap. I'm practicing with standards at the time. So I have a face mask covering.
Okay, you have your body armor on?
No, I tried taking any opportunity that I had with the group to de-escalate. So if I showed up and full basic hands here, combat guy, we got like a +1 with us, or more powered by numbers within the group. So I taken the opportunity.
And again, Your Honor, who's saying this to him as far as wearing the body armor and a +1, if he knows?
I did that as the group entirely. So Paul, Joe, Pete, everybody that showed up at the protest, just de-escalating their intentions of what they're wanting to do, because they're seeking violence.
No, I guess.
Objection,
I
Your
was-
Honor. We don't know what they're seeking. We have he has no way to testify to what
I
their
just wanna-
intentions are.
Let me finish.
Okay,
my-
I heard you. Go ahead next.
They, as far as when he said, hey, we got a +1 here, saying we got a +1. When he's talking about and I don't have a problem with his testimony. When he's talking about who's saying something, I would just ask if he knows exactly who it was that said it, as opposed to saying they, Pete, Paul, Joe, whoever may have said
Hold
it.
on.
I think what he was talking about when Mr. Patrick Rose was, this is why I did this, so that I wouldn't escalate the situation really with them. It's by the proper pronoun. I mean, he wasn't quoting anybody there.
I think he said that they considered him a +1 or they, so that presupposes that they've said something to him. That's why I said that.
Go ahead.
The +1 is just my verbiage to it, so I try to strip them down to not be like them, just separating myself from them and their numbers.
And I think we know now, if you know who said something, so I'm gonna let you keep rolling now, but if you know exactly who said something, you
I think-
say, thank you, I appreciate that.
And Your Honor, again, I still renew my objection to the use that their intent was to do violence. There's been nothing introduced to that. He has no way to know what their intent is in any way. And nothing violent has been exposed. So I don't know how he comes to this rationale and conclusion.
Michelle, his answer is his speculation.
Any response?
Yeah, Judge, evidence comes from the witness stand, okay? And these are great closing arguments, but Michigan Rule of Evidence 701 allows witnesses to offer their personal opinion as to a situation. He's in this situation, he's allowed to offer his personal opinion about this. If
He
they
is-
want to excuse me,
No, I looked at him. Go ahead.
if they want to cross-examine on this, welcome to do so.
Your Honor, how can he possibly know what their intent is unless they expressed it, which that has not been testified to,
Actually, he has.
not at this protest.
Well, from
So
what
if he expressed it on Monday, then on Thursday, it doesn't mean anything. That doesn't.
and his actions were to de-escalate the situation. I think that's clear. Overruled, just keep moving.
Thanks, Judge. So whose idea was this to not wear the body armor and your long gun and all the extra ammunition, the sidearm and, you know, the boogaloo patch? I mean, is this something you came up with? or-
It was discussed at the FBI office that I would not be wearing any body.
Okay, and, okay, everybody, are the other members of the Wolverine Watchmen all kitted up?
They are.
What do you do to explain to them why you're different?
I told them I was coming from work, and I worked in the Flint area, and I can't. Rifles and stuff. Flint has a high vehicles, and I didn't want my stuff to be stolen or broken into.
Okay, did that seem to assuage them or, you know, was that a reasonable explanation when you got there?
Yes,
Okay, so while you're there, is this a day that you go into the Capitol, the first time you go to the Capitol?
that day, no.
Okay, so that day you're all outside, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did Joe use these protests at the Capitol for any other reason?
As a recruitment platform.
Okay, and was there any discussion about wanting to increase the number of members with the Wolverine Watchmen?
There was, yes, they were wanting to grow their numbers.
Who wanted that?
The leadership, predominantly Joe.
Okay. Did Joe ever tell you when he started this group?
It was shortly after his arrest from his gun charge.
Okay. After this meeting at the Capitol, or this protest attending at the Capitol, about how long were you there?
A few hours.
Okay, and when you left, did the group leave as a group, or did you break up individually?
We broke up individually. We all drove separately.
Okay. when you were there that day, and forgive me if I've asked this, but how was Joe dressed?
In body armor, so we had his kid. Okay, to go back to your previous statement, I gave Paul a ride to that protest. I believe it was that day.
Paul Bellar?
That's correct.
Okay, where did he live then?
In Milford.
Okay, and, okay, that would have been south of where you live, correct?
No. Out of myself that day. I gave Paul a ride.
Which day? I'm sorry.
The 15th, the
The protest on the 15th of April?
Correct.
Okay, you did not give Paul a ride. Okay. Did you give Paul a ride to another protest?
I did, yes.
We'll talk about that in a little bit, okay? Any trainings after this first protest?
I believe there was, yes.
Okay, where was it held?
The Munith property.
When you went there, is that correct?
I did, yes.
Okay, was Joe Morrison there?
He was,
Pete Musico?
yes.
Okay, how about Paul Bellar?
He was there as well.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about the kind of things that were practiced that day?
For several trainings, it was still the same. So low crawling with your kid, we were getting more people to join the group. So it was to see how your integrity of your kid would withhold to moving and bounding. Some more medical training, more room clearing and more ambush clearing or ambush.
The, you said, are new people, new members to the Wolverine Watchmen showing up at this training?
Yes,
Okay, does it appear the numbers are growing?
they are.
Okay, as new people enter, does that change the training dynamic at all?
Yes, we have to break up into groups because there's more people are there. So you have to kind of categorize the training so that people can cycle through.
Okay, are the new people training identically as the people that have been there for several trainings?
They are, yes.
Okay, let me back up for just a little bit. Did anybody ever tell you how many trainings were conducted out in Dunn Road and Munith prior to you becoming a member of the Wolverine Watch?
Show has said that they had about 7 trainings prior to me coming.
Okay. On the second training you went to, you said, I think, was room clearing part of it?
Yes.
And how about hallway clearing? Was that practiced at all?
That went through their hallways to stairwells, yes.
The four-man, was it a four-man stack practice?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to leading. I don't have a problem with him testifying, but he's leading. He ought to be able to be asked a question, what was the training about? And the witness ought to be able to tell what the actual training was from his own mind, not the leading questions we're getting here, Your Honor.
I'll rephrase.
Yeah.
Do you know what a four-man stack is?
I did.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about that?
It's a team or squad tactics used to gain entry to a building or a room. You would have, depending on the structure, more people, but traditionally it's 4 people. You don't want to overexert your manpower going into a room, and you don't want to go in there with few people. So usually 4 is about the going number, and you would go and gain entry to a room, on the walls to clear your corners, and then go to multiple rooms, to stairwells, to halls.
Was that practice on the second training?
It was, yes.
Who taught that?
Paul did.
Okay. Did you tell them what to say or to tell them how to do it?
No, I helped or assisted Paul with it, again, with the way that they were stacking up the movement that they had going on. I didn't want there to, again, because they were shooting live fires throughout these training as well, not with the actual room training. But I was looking at the foreseeable future, if we did do this, to not be flagging individuals, so how to lower your gun at the low ready once you come in the room, then bring it up and go in that, because you're building repetition, getting reps in, and that's becoming like a building block or a foundation. So if you practice something wrong the right way, you're instilling the wrong way to do that. So I'm trying to overall safety for the individuals there.
Okay. Does crossing a road take any particular skill in, if you're a military unit?
It does, yes.
Okay. Was that practiced at all?
It was, yes.
Okay. Who taught that?
All of that.
Okay. Let me ask you this. I mean, there's obviously several things that are being practiced during this, this training. Who came up with the idea of what we're gonna practice today?
Paul, eventually, he would put out like a training schedule on what was going to be going, like conducted throughout the day. So he
Your
was
Honor,
training.
I'm sorry. I would just, if we can get, eventually, are we talking June? Are we talking May?
Put it in their
Normally
context.
Cross-examination, but I'm not hearing any objection. What's the rule of evidence that he's relying on?
The rule of evidence is that it's not giving the jury a timeline. I mean,
What number of Michigan rule of evidence?
It's a fair question for him to ask. Timeline is so good. No, we're not jumping ahead, even though it appears to me you're going in chronological order.
I think we are. Thank you. We're in April. Okay. May I continue, Judge?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Who comes up, I'll ask the question again. These different things, room clearing, hallway clearing, four-man stacks, crossing roads. Who came up with the idea to practice those things that day?
Those were put out through Paul.
Okay. Are you familiar with what movement to cover is?
With the cover or with the content.
Well, either.
So movement to contact is so in the military, we're looking for a fight. We're leaving our staging area and we're going out, and our sole objective is to move until we get contacts.
Is that practiced at all?
It was, yes,
Okay, who led that training?
Paul did.
Okay. What is cover fire?
So cover is anything that can stop incoming projectiles. Can cover concealment. But any kind of a hard fixture structure, so moving around vehicles that could work as cover, more concealment, and then bounding off it.
Okay. During the second training, Dan, is any discussion of Governor Whitmer raised by anybody?
We talked about it, yes,
Who raised it?
amongst the leadership.
Do you remember who?
No,
Okay, what was discussed?
just the displeasure of her and wanting to obtain the address of the governor.
Okay. At the second training, did Mr. Musico talk at all about the protest that you had just been to earlier that month?
The April 15th,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, did he talk at all about him having any contact with the police while he was there?
He did.
What did he say?
He was bragging about how he went up to Joe's gunning sergeant, said uniform or not, kill you.
Okay. Did he say why he was doing that?
I don't know if it was an intimidation. I can't really call what led up to that.
Okay. After this second training, is there any discussion about insurgency training?
Yes,
Who brings that up?
Joe does.
Okay, and tell the jury in what way he brings that to you.
He asked me numerous times about insurgency. And I was like, counterinsurgency or insurgency? He was focusing on solely insurgency and then to building up my house for someone that might be coming to gain entry into my house.
Is this the same thing or two different things? I mean, the insurgency versus home protection.
Those are two different. So for insurgency, like you're being an aggressor, and for a home defense is entirely different than
I get it.
insurgency.
Did Joe make a request of you?
He wanted me to help him out with his house, how to kind of fortify it or go through and how to clear his house.
Okay. How about the insurgency training? Did he make any request of you about that?
If I can assist in insurgency, I told him I didn't, my experience in Iraq was counterinsurgency. We worked with anything about it, so we're countering.
Okay. Did you give him that insurgency training?
No.
Okay. You said that you went to more than one protest, I think. Is that correct?
I did, yes.
Did you go to a second protest in the month of April?
I did, yes.
Do you remember the date today?
It's April 30th.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about why you went to this?
It was put out through Joe that there was going to be another protest of the Capitol and that we should come and
By this point in time, Dan, do you have any kind of recording device that you're using that the FBI has given you?
I do, yes.
Okay, backing up a little bit to the April 15th protest. Did you meet anybody there by the name of Adam Fox on that date?
On the 15th,
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, my mistake. Tell us, if you will, why you were using a recording device by April 30th.
to monitor the activity that was going on.
Okay, is that something you asked for, or is that something that was suggested by Special Agent Simple and Chambers?
By the special agents.
Agree to do that?
I did.
Okay. When you get to the April 30th protest, is there, tell us the setting, like outside the building.
It's raining. They have a loud going, so playing, people are chanting. They're like questioning their why they're at the protest. And then getting them. So
Okay. I mean, you're there, correct?
I am.
Is Joe Morrison there?
Yes.
Is Pete Musico there?
Yes.
And is Paul Beller there?
Yes.
How are they dressed that day?
Tactical manner. So they have their kits on, long guns, and their pistols.
Okay. How do you arrive and how are you dressed?
Again, I'm dressed down, so I have a black fleece on, a ball cap, and face covering.
Okay, but you have a weapon that day?
I do.
Okay, and what kind of weapon do you carry?
Carry a Glock 19.
Pistol,
Pistol.
is that right? Okay, is it concealed?
It is.
Okay, and I think you told us, how did you know to go to this protest?
It was put out through Joe.
Okay, on the Wire app?
Correct.
Did it say why? Did he say why he wanted people to go?
The exact verbiage, I can't remember why, but it
On this date, when you're outside, can you describe for the jury, like what the scene is on the Capitol? You've done it a little bit here. And what I'm really asking about is how many people are outside the Capitol that day before when you get there?
75, 100 at the most of total people there.
Said there was music being played. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, people giving speeches. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is the idea of going into the Capitol discussed?
It was brought out, sort of saying, hey, in 45 minutes, we're not.
Okay, who came up with that idea?
I heard that from Pete first.
Okay,
It was going through Joe and Pete.
and did Joe disagree or agree, or was he neutral on that
He
idea?
agreed to it.
How about Paul? Did he, where was he at with that idea?
He was on board with it. He made a statement that we're going to bum rush it.
Okay. At some point in time, you go into the Capitol.
We do, yes.
Do you have to force your way in, or tell us about how you got inside?
No, so building up to that. Way into Haywood. They were saying. Stacked up along the building, so as we were going to gain entry to the room. And then the state police allowed people to come in signal file. They way inside the Capitol.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I couldn't, you said they could or they could not bring in signs?
They couldn't bring their signs.
Could not. Okay, thank you.
I gotta ask about that. So you can bring a long gun into the Capitol, right?
Correct.
Sidearm.
I don't know. They're
Objection, he knows foundation, he don't work with capitalist.
If he knows,
If you know.
probably maintain more muzzle awareness with your firearms, so you're being aware and cognitive of what you're doing with your rifle.
Is this a speculation or does he know?
Do you know why they did not allow you to?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, when you get inside the Capitol, I mean, do you guys all, when I say you guys, I mean, the defendants all go in the Capitol, is that right?
Yes,
You go in the Capitol?
I do.
Are there other Wolverine watchmen there?
There is, yes.
About how many?
There was 3 other. that was
Okay,
with us.
and when you get into the Capitol, do you stay together as a group or do you separate?
We tried to stay together as a group. They kind of separated. I stuck with Paul. He seemed the most, even through training, the most aggressive. So I was wanting to be with him.
Okay, and how many people are inside the Capitol when you guys get inside there?
A large amount.
Can you give us a rough number?
No, I mean, it's shoulder to shoulder, and they're confining up on the 2nd floor, so they're pushing up against state police. The exact number now.
Okay, but I think your description of it, shoulder to shoulder.
Yes,
Okay, and are other people there? Would you describe this as possibly also part of a Second Amendment protest? Okay, so are there other people there that are similarly armed with long guns and sidearms?
there is, yes.
Okay, do you know who these other people are?
At the time, no.
Okay. Tell us, if you will, if there's a point in time that you're up on the 2nd floor rotunda outside of the House chamber doors.
Yes,
Okay, when you're up there, is Joe Morrison up there?
yes,
Is Pete Musico up there?
yes,
Paul Beller up there?
yes.
Okay, and tell us, if you will, if there are any state troopers that are there.
There is, yes.
Okay, and what are the state troopers doing while you and the defendants are upstairs on the 2nd floor rotunda?
So they're the shoulder to each other, facing towards the crowd and creating a buffer zone between doors.
Okay, and do you hear Pete Musico say anything while is the whole crowd up there?
Yes,
And is the crowd facing this line of state troopers?
they are, yes.
What kind of things are being said at that point in time? Describe the setting for us. I mean, is this like a calm interaction? I mean, what's happening?
No, very chaotic. People are yelling and screaming. They're directly in the faces of the state police officers. And Pete's yelling forward, trying to get the crowd to move forward on the state police officers.
Okay. Adam, can I ask you to pull up exhibit 48, please? This has already been admitted, Judge. You recognize this picture, Dan?
I do.
Who took it?
I did.
Okay, and we have on the far right, there's a 6 photograph in the picture, correct?
Correct.
And the gentleman on the right, who is that, if you know?
So to our right,
Our right, yeah.
that would be Pete Musico.
And next to him, moving left across the picture.
This one's tan pants. That's Paul Beller.
Okay.
The red flannel. That's Joe Morrison. The 2 individuals there are brothers. I'm not sure on their names. And then the far individual, I think his name was Choose to Shrug. They're Wolverine Watchmen members at that time.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Adam. You can take that down. Dan, I'd like to turn now to the month of May 2020. Are you, you've been in the Wolverine Watchman now about, sounds like about a month and a half. Did you hear anything about QRFs?
I have
Okay, and who did you hear that from?
Paul.
Okay, Paul Bellar.
Correct.
Okay, and how was the QRF described to you by Paul?
Be a reactionary force or members to someone in the group that's in distress or anything.
Okay, The letters QRF, I mean, what did that mean?
Stands for a quick reaction force. It's predominantly used by the military.
Okay, and what was Paul's vision for how this QRF might be used by the Wolverine Watchman?
We would have like various groups set up, and that if someone needed help, that regional QRF would respond to whoever was requesting help.
Okay, was Paul the only Wolverine Watchman you met that had this vision for using QRFs?
No,
Who else did?
Joe Morrison.
Okay, and was that part of, in fact, some of the written things that you saw?
Yes.
Turning again to May, was there ever a QRF deployment in the month of May that you remember?
There was.
Can you tell me about the first one you recall?
It's for a lower receiver. So there was two individuals in the group that was selling a gun part to another individual. And
Uh-huh.
They thought that the person presenting it was a Fed, and the person initiating the QRF or requested for help to be on.
Who asked for you to be present?
Alex Davison was the person selling the lower receiver portion of the gun. It was a gun buy, is what they were saying.
Okay, and did you take part in this QRF?
I did.
How did you know about it? How did you learn that the QRF was called for?
It was put up in a chat, and then they made a QRF sub window or sub chat within the Wolverine Watchman on wire.
Okay, and who of the defendants, do you know which one of them published that, or put that out?
No, it was in our region that we had established because there was other QRFs amongst the group. So Alex was in Paul Beller's QRF group.
Okay, so this area is Paul Beller's QRF group. Is that what I just heard?
Yeah, there was multiple QRFs, so they kind of did it in a region. So, if I'm here in Jackson, I'm not going to respond to somebody up in Grand Rapids. They had their own QRF. Jackson had their own QRF. Various areas had their QRF, so people could respond in a timely manner to help out.
Okay, so on this, the first QRF in the month of May, you learn about it through the wire application.
Yes,
And who participates in this QRF?
myself, Paul, Alex Davison, Ty Garvin, and another Wolverine Watchman individual.
Remember that person's name?
I think his name was Tyler.
And tell us, if you will, like where do you go to? You leave your home to, go to this QRF, correct?
I do.
And is this something that you've discussed with Special Agent Hempwood before going?
Oh, I initially meted up with them first, and we went over what was going to be happening. And then I went from there down to Alex Davison.
And tell us what happened at Alex's house.
We kind of did a
Is Paul Bellar there?
yes, he's
Okay,
leading
go
the
ahead.
conversation on how it would be responding. So we pulled up Google Maps and we're looking at the surrounding area. So ingress, egress, so how vehicles can pull into the parking lot, how they can pull out, if any buildings surrounding us had an elevated standpoint where potential snipers might be at.
You have a recording device this day?
Yeah.
Okay, and how many vehicles are involved in this operation?
In total, there's 3. So my vehicle, Alex Davison's vehicle, Ty Garvin's vehicle.
Can you tell the jury why you were willing to drive that day?
To maintain some kind of control over whoever was going to be occupying my vehicle. So for Paul was riding it. Once we got to the parking lot, I could create like a standoff distance. So distance equals time and time equals life. So if there is an altercation, we have a window to a reaction to potential law show up.
where did you learn that lesson we just quoted? Distance equals time, time equals length.
Through the military.
I mean, did you go through any special training with the FBI before you did this?
No, I had no, even, everything was on the fly. I had no like playbook to go off of. I had nobody in my ear tell me what to do. It was all on my own.
Okay, I mean, much of this is you're left to your own wits. Is that a fair summary?
I am.
Okay. I think you told us that Alex was going to sell a lower receiver and he wanted the coverage of this QRF, correct?
That's correct.
Do you remember what anything that Paul Bellar said about what he would do if somebody tried to grab Alex?
He wouldn't let anybody grab him. So if Fed were to get out and try grabbing him, he would get out and shoot him.
Was there any concern by anybody in the QRF that day about snipers being in the area?
There was, when we were back at the residence before we went out, again, we had Google Maps pulled up, and so we're looking at the topographical area of the area, and we've seen the surrounding buildings, how they had an elevator. Where it's going to.
The in terms of, I mean, the Home Depot, was it open this day?
It was later in the day, so around closing time. I'm not sure what time they closed, but it was later afternoon, so
Was it dark out in April?
no, it was still daylight.
Okay. So regardless of closing time, they're open at the time that this is going on, right?
Yes.
Who chose this location to go to?
It was discussed amongst us at the residence.
What happened, and tell us about what happened. I mean, did Alex meet this person who was going to be purchasing this lower receiver?
He did. So we had like a three-way call going, so we all could talk amongst ourselves. We were calling out vehicles as they were passing by. By that is the person selling it. Paul pulled his rifle out, loaded a magazine, chambered the rifle, and waited for the go through. Real brief. Exchanged money, took the low receiver, and went on his way. And then our vehicle followed him to see.
Okay, whose idea was that?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Was it your idea?
It might have been, I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. You go to another FTX training exercise after that first QRF in May,
We do, yes.
okay? When you say we, who's the we?
So everyone in the Wolverine leadership, so Paul, Pete, and Joe, I present several other Wolverine Watchmen members
Where's this held at?
at the Munith property.
Okay. How did you know to go to this training?
It's brought through Joe,
Okay, on the Wire app or somewhere, on some other means?
through wire.
Okay. Is there any itinerary discussed for what's going to be practiced that day?
I'm not sure there was one put out, but it was always discussed once we would show up on the location, what was going to be being covered throughout the day.
Okay. Did Pete talk at all that at this training as to why you were actually training?
Can't recall on that.
Okay. Did Pete ever discuss in general why they were training at the Munith property?
It was, I can't recall.
No problem. On this training after the first QRF, tell us what things were practiced.
At the Munith property.
Yes.
So again, it was just reinforcing the previous trainings. We did a lot of, again, building repetitions. So again, the foundation of training. Ambush is L-shaped ambush, developing the vehicle takeover, room clearing, things of that nature.
Tell us a little bit about the vehicle takeover training.
So we would simulate, reacting to contact, so getting out of the vehicle, working around the vehicle, using the vehicle for cover, how to approach vehicles who pose a threat and engage the potentially hostile.
Did Mr. Bellar teach anything on this, this training after the first QRF?
Yes,
What did he teach?
so the medical portion, he was leading the low crawling. We did more reflexive fires, some of the room clearing. We just kind of for the training.
Okay. Did he teach anything else besides that in medical?
At that time.
Okay. After this training, was there another QRF in the month of May?
There was, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us who called for this QRF?
Paul did.
Paul Bellar, correct?
Right.
Okay. And how did you learn about it?
He put a post on for Watchman, and then we were communicating with his QRF group.
Okay. And did he give a reason for why he wanted to call this QRF?
It was for the Black, excuse me, the Black Lives Matter protest that was going down there. He had some friends that was going to be in the.
Did he say where these friends were from?
They were acquaintances through the gun range that he worked at.
Okay. Did he say why his friends were going?
That they were going to be providing like medical treatment to people that were opposed if they were contacted by the police, so like pepper sprayed or tear gassed or rubber bullets, anything of that nature.
Okay. Was there, where did Mr. Bellar describe where this protest was occurring?
In Detroit,
Okay. Did Mr. Bellar live in the city of Detroit?
he did not.
What city did he live in?
Milford, I believe.
That's out in Oakland County, correct?
Correct.
And did he say how you'd be able to identify his friends who would be in this crowd?
We gave them chem lights. So Paul and myself, we gave them green and red chem lights for identifiers for ourselves to use
Okay. And where did you meet them at?
at Paul's house.
Okay, they came there.
They did.
Okay, were they part of, tell us what happened at Paul's house before the protest?
Kind of like the build up for it with the introduction of them, what they were going to be doing. We were going to be a QRF, a quick reaction force to them. Again, we pulled up Google Maps. We're looking at different avenues of approach where they might be at. The gentleman stated that they were there the night before. One of the members was a Marine, or a Marine was with them, and they were seeing how the police forward against the protesters and how far they were. We're looking at the staging area where that avenue we're at, where we could go as far as what kind of vacant buildings were present, getting to those structures to get an elevated standpoint.
Why would you want an elevated standpoint?
So you can see more of the area, and you can get potentially more eyes on it. You can see further rather than just down a road.
Good. How long does this meeting last at Mr. Bellar's home in Milford?
With the individuals that was
Yes.
going up, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay, do you all leave as a group, or do they leave and you and the QRF stay there for a while?
We stay there for a while.
What happens after the two gentlemen leave to go down to the protest in Detroit?
So then we continue our buildups with mission prepping. We situating our magazine pouches, our IFACs, we're loading magazines, checking our ballistic plates. Some people had steel plates, so they're making sure that the trauma pads are properly fitted behind them. You hear a lot of, like on the audio, you hear a lot of Velcro going. The trauma pads on them with the AR 100 steel, it's a steel, basically a steel metal. So if you get shot with like a slug, there's a lot of kinetic energy that is moved to that. So you have a trauma pad that would absorb some of that, so it doesn't continue traveling through you. Other members of the group have ceramic plates, so it can really absorb that kinetic energy that's coming at you. So we're just going over all of our gear, mission prepping. I brings in night vision goggles, so I try getting them from possession. I'm trying to limit their capabilities of lethality is what I'm trying to do.
I gotta ask, what were you thinking this night?
some shit's gonna go down. Excuse my language, Your Honor.
We've heard worse.
Scared?
I was nervous. I know my capabilities. I know how to like defend myself, but in my vehicle, we had 4 other people in there with large caliber rifles. I do have a live feed device going, but as we get down there, I have no idea if the FBI is even listening. I don't know if the battery might have died. I don't know if we're in a,
The technology's working.
yeah, if the coverage is not there. So if this does go kinetic and we get into a gunfight, it's,
What are you doing to try to de-escalate the situation?
so at that point, there's really nothing the train's already going in a sense. We're looking at structures to get into, get an elevated standpoint. We're going over our gear. Ty had some night vision goggles with like a mount to be able to fix that onto ballistic helmet. He had a ballistic helmet to protect slugs or projectiles from that. So I tried getting his setup that he has so that I can have that in my possession, so that nobody out there has technology that can defeat the police, because we're night vision capability. The police aren't down there with, at least the ones on the lines with night vision. They're just stopping the protest.
Talk about Ty, are we talking about Mr. Ty Garvin?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Is Mr. You load up in the vehicle?
We do, yes.
Who drives?
I am,
Why do you drive?
again, the little de-escalation I can do to maintain what kind of positive control inside that vehicle. And then if something were to happen, I have a way for myself to get out of.
When you get down to Detroit, where do you go?
We stayed behind the Masonic Temple. But down there was a pre-discussed location at Paul's house where we'd be.
How far?
Let's take a break.
No problem. Dan, I think when we left off, we were finished talking about, or we were in the middle of talking about this QRF down in Detroit. And do you remember what the protest was for?
Black Lives Matter.
Okay. And did they have was there a route that you believe that the march was going to follow in the city?
There was, yes.
Okay. They talked about a little bit of, looking at, the area, and you said you staged behind the Masonic Temple, I believe.
That's correct.
And there was a discussion of Mr. Bellars before you left, is that right?
Yes.
When you got down to the Masonic Temple area, excuse me, can you tell us if Mr. Garbin was using any technology to assist the group?
He was, yes. He had his tablet. He was an aviation mechanic, and he had kind of aircraft were in the facility, so we were monitoring.
Okay. Was there any belief that those helicopters might be law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay. When you get down there, tell us what happens after you arrive.
We staged for a good amount of time. We're just discussing, listening. We have a communications app on wire going with the police scanners. So we're listening to the traffic there, communicating with the people inside the protests, so Paul's friends that are advancing. And then later on, we exit the vehicle to don body armor.
Okay. And you're outside of the vehicle at that point.
We are, yes.
Okay. Does the group ever leave this area that you described as a staging area? How long are you there for?
Several hours, maybe. It felt like that. The exact time, I'm not sure.
Is there something that causes the group to say, okay, it's time to go now, or we've done what we've done?
I think the protest was disrupting. It was late hours of the night, around midnight or so.
So the protest was disrupting?
Dispersing. So they
Okay.
were-
The march was over?
It's the individuals in the group were, yes.
Okay. And had anything happened untold between law enforcement and protesters?
From what I call no.
Okay. Do you remember Mr. Bellar saying anything about what he was going to do if the police did something he didn't like?
He would get out and start shooting at the police officers if they're shooting at the civilians.
Okay. Was there a third QRF during the month of May?
There was, yes.
Can you tell the jury how long after the second one, the third one happened?
The following day.
Okay. And whose idea was it to call for this QRF?
Like Paul's QRF group, but Daniel Harris needed the assistance of the.
Okay. And where was this QRF going to respond to?
In Flint.
Okay. Was there any pre-staging done or pre-attendance discussion or?
No, that was kind of a hasty one. We didn't go this nowhere near what we did for Detroit as far as meeting up on location, pulling up Google Maps and going over on how we're gonna approach it.
Okay.
It's kind of following immediately after that. So there wasn't really any time to prep, so to speak.
How do you get to this? Anybody go with you?
No, I met them there.
I'm sorry,
I met them there in Flint.
I'm sorry.
I met the individuals, so Daniel Harris and Paul in Flint.
Okay. And where do you meet at?
The farmer's market in Flint?
Downtown Flint there?
Yes,
But the main street of Flint, do you know the name of it?
Saginaw Street.
Where was the march going to take place?
Down Saginaw Street.
How far were you, or how far was the group, you, Mr. Bellar, and Mr. Harris from Saginaw Street?
3 blocks, if that.
How long would it have taken you to walk that distance if you had to
Not long.
measure it in minutes?
Yes.
Um, How long was the group there?
Maybe an hour. Yeah, I'm not keeping track of the time.
Was there any discussion about why the QRF was deployed that day?
Daniel Harris had a friend or associate that worked near that area. So for IU and a person there, they wanted to be Harris wanted to.
What you're waiting there, I mean, have you communicated to Special Agent Empla that, you know, this QRF is being deployed,
I did, yes.
okay, beforehand?
I was at their office, yes.
Okay, you have a recording device that day,
I do.
okay? And tell us, if you will, when you leave, do you leave separately by yourself again?
Yes, took them back to their staging area where the vehicles all met up at.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a place that you all met before going to the farmer's market,
It was the Holiday Inn. So it was just adjacent to the farmer's market.
okay? And if you will, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen on the jury what weapons Mr. Bellar came with that day?
He had his long gun and a pistol.
Do you have any armor?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Harris,
He had an AK-47 in his body armor.
okay, yourself,
It's my pistol.
okay. What was it like waiting there in the truck at the farmer's market until you dispersed?
Uneasy. Again, they're just waiting for a potential violence to erupt and then that they can act on it. So
Okay. Like to turn now to the month of June of 2020. Do you remember a leadership meeting occurring around the 3rd of June?
yes,
Okay, where did that meeting take place?
Ty Garvin's residence.
Okay, and did Mr. Morrison attend?
Did,
Did Mr. Bellar attend?
did,
Was Mr. Musico present?
he was not.
Okay. How did you know to go to this meeting?
That was put out through the wire app to go there.
Okay. And what was your understanding of why the group was meeting at Ty Garvin's this day?
It was kind of a wide array of subjects, but overall leadership and to discuss a little bit about what was going on with the national.
Okay. You mentioned, I think earlier this morning, that you were added to the leadership group and the leadership chat. I think on your first occasion of visiting or going out to Dunn Road to train, is that correct?
That's correct.
From the time you were added to that chat until this leadership meeting, I mean, had any real duties of leadership fallen upon you or been, you know, given to you by any of the 3 defendants?
No.
Okay. I think you told us you helped Paul Bellar to train during some different trainings, is that right?
I assisted him, yes.
He was leading the trainings, is that correct?
He was.
And you mentioned that Pete didn't attend this leadership meeting, is that right?
That's correct.
Was Mr. Musico in the leadership chat?
He was not, no.
Okay. During, up until this point in time, and you've been around Mr. Musico in some different settings. I think you said you trained with him multiple times. You've been to protests. And I mean, did Mr. Musico appear to have any influence over the other individual members of the Wolverine Watch?
Objection, call for speculation, yeah.
That lays the foundation. He's been around quite a bit, Judge. Did he have any influence?
Overruled.
Joe had made the statement that Pete served as counsel for him. He lived with him.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. I apologize. I just couldn't hear.
Joe said that Pete served as counsel for him and they would cooperate. There was no need for him to be on the leadership path.
Pete and Joe reside in the same residence, is that correct?
They do, yes,
Pete and Joe are of different ages, is that correct?
they are.
I mean, obviously Pete is older than Joe by quite a few years, would you agree? Who is Joe married to?
Pete's daughter.
Okay. And in terms of Pete's leadership or his influence on other members of the Wolverine Watchmen, can you give the jury a flavor for what you're thinking?
Pete and Joe are communicating daily. Communication's going on.
Okay.
Joe works for Pete, so he's around him nonstop, or they work together. So
So this meeting, I believe you said it was at Ty Garvin's, is that correct?
that's great.
And what time of day do you arrive there approximately?
Mid-afternoon.
And besides Mr. Morrison, Mr. Beller, yourself, I assume Mr. Garvin is there too, is that correct?
He is, yes.
And is he part of leadership?
He is.
And anybody else there that you remember?
Daniel Harris.
Anybody else?
Alex Davidson was briefly there. He left. He was not part of the conversation.
Okay.
Jada was present as well, Joe's wife.
What was discussed at the meeting? What was the first topic of discussion?
I want to say that the leadership structure was being discussed.
Okay. And tell the jury a little bit more about that.
They wanted to kind of have more of a command structure, commanding officer and then sub-subordinates underneath it.
Okay. Did Mr. Bellar take part in that discussion?
He recommended that I would be the CO, so the commanding officer of the group.
Okay. And when that was suggested by Mr. Bellar, what was your response?
I said, no, it wasn't my group to begin with. I didn't start the group. It was Joe's group. He created the group. I don't have a social media present as much as him. And then circling back that it was his group, he was holding the vetting. And everybody was going to his property to train.
How was Joe using the social media to further the goals of the Wolverine Watchmen at this point in time?
As a recruitment, but he was also putting out, he said that he knew like national members. Be in touch with them in communication with the movement. And he'll be putting out that he's accumulating members of his group and that they're conducting training.
Was there any discussion about how the leadership structure might be arranged in compared to gangs?
Yes, Daniel Harris brought up on a gang structure, so like a CO and then lieutenants and sergeants.
Adam, can you pull up exhibit? And can you say that for us? I'm sorry. I want you to listen to this exhibit, Dan, and I'll ask you some questions after, okay? Go ahead.
Go over describe it though.
What do you describe quickly?
Pretty much how gangs are set up and
Oh, so the company.
yeah.
PLs for each one, while
Okay. There's a small child in the background, is that correct?
Yes,
Child is that?
Jay, or Joe and Jada's daughter.
Okay. They brought their child to the leadership meeting at Thai Gardens.
They did, yes.
Okay. In the discussion we just heard, I mean, was that recorded by you?
It was, yes.
Okay, and it starts off with, or not starts off, but the second line is Mr. Bellar saying, I like the way Beaker described it though. And that's Mr. Harris, correct?
Correct.
And then you ask, what did you describe? And Harris lays out the idea of it being similar to gangs or team leaders. It would be like sergeants. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You can take that down. Thank you, Adam. During this meeting, is there some consensus reached or agreement reached as to what each individual person's rank or role would be in the leadership?
There was, yes.
What was the assigned role of Joe?
He was the commanding officer, so the CO.
And did someone take on the role of executive officer, also known as XO?
Yes,
Who was that?
that was me.
Can you tell the jury, I mean, did you lobby for that? Did you ask for that? Is that something you sought out, and pursued?
No, it was not.
Why not?
I was not supposed to be in charge of the group or lead the group.
Okay. And what did you, and you resisted their efforts to make you the commander, right?
I did.
Okay. Tell us how you became the XO.
Just going off the previous discussion, saying that the group was already Joe's, and established that being held at his residence. They put Joe as the CO. Trained that happen.
How did you, in terms of accepting that role, I mean, tell us why you accepted it, why you didn't reject that role as well.
That's so I can be in the know with Joe as his thought process. What he wanted to distribute.
Okay. While you're there at this meeting, is there any discussion about a meeting in Dublin?
There is, yes.
Before this leadership meeting, had you heard of anything about Dublin?
I recall, no.
Okay. And, so you're in leadership, right? When you get there, who else knows about this meeting in Dublin? And this is the first time you've heard of it, correct?
Correct.
Who brings it up?
Joe does.
Okay, does Mr. Bellar appear to have any knowledge about this meeting in Dublin?
No.
Okay, so what is it that Joe says about this meeting?
There's a gathering of like-minded individuals on a national level that are, so they represent different states and they're all meeting up. Or they're. What he's putting up. Together to share ideas, like-minded individuals working together.
Okay, like-minded in what way? Okay. And have you learned, now you've been in the group since March, we're, I think, into early June now. I mean, have you learned more about this Boogaloo movement by being around the defendants and the Wolverine Watchmen?
I have, yes.
Okay. Have you learned that they have, for instance, certain symbols that represent their ideology?
They do, yes.
Can you give the jury some example of what those symbols were that you learned?
Some minor identifiers, some like igloos that address with it, and the Hawaiian shirts that they would wear.
Okay. In terms of the discussion about the meeting in Dublin, is there any immediate agreement about that the group should attend?
They were wanting to, but they felt it was pretty hasty. They didn't have time to really plan or prepare for it, and they didn't know if they were walking into like an FBI trap because of the COVID restriction.
Did Joe say who was the sponsor of the meeting or who was leading it?
I think the gentleman from Delaware at that time was being brought up on that,
Okay, did you learn who that gentleman was later?
Barry Croft.
Did it appear to you that Joe Morrison had been communicating with Mr. Croft?
Yes.
Adam, can you pull up exhibit 90?
Sounds like something that a lot of feds are gonna be at.
Right, that's what I'm saying. If it's at a convention, you're gonna have feds there, flat out. And if it's at somebody's house, you don't wanna go, you don't know what the fuck they got set up.
Right.
That's Mr. Bellar expressing concern that law enforcement may be there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Were members of law enforcement allowed in the Wolverine Watchman?
They were not, no.
Exhibit 91, please. Al.
This is my main concern, man. Like, I only feel comfortable, we all go. Right. The downside to that is, if feds are there, our entire league.
It's Mr. Harris expressing concern that the entire leadership of the Wolverine Watchman would be gone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there was a leadership structure to this group.
There was.
I'm going to turn your attention now to another FTX that happens after this leadership meeting. Is there a mandatory attendance FTX that you're aware of?
There was, yes.
Is this in the month of June also?
Yes.
You know the date? And where was this held at?
Yes, residence of Joe's house.
How did you know to go there, Dan?
It was put up through the Watchman, Wolverine Watchman main page on Wire.
You remember who put it out?
Through Joe, it was a purge session that they were doing. They had a lot of people down there that was just on Wire talking. They weren't showing up. So they were separating the people from that were just talking to the people that were showing up.
Okay. You ever heard of the term keyboard warriors?
I have
Okay, what does that mean?
that you're just talking online, you're hiding behind a monitor on a keyboard.
Was it a desire to get rid of those types of people and this mandatory attendance?
It was, yes.
Do you know, did anybody put out a itinerary for what was the training was going to involve that day?
Paul had put out what was going to be going, conducted on training, yes.
Mr. Bellar did?
Correct.
Okay. And how many people showed up that day?
Around 10 or so.
Okay. And you describe for the ladies and gentlemen on the jury, what kind of training was done that day at the Dunn Road property of Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musicos?
Some more room clearing, ambush, L-shaped ambush. And then we went on to live fire. So we were shooting at silhouette targets and various objects that they had to shoot at.
Okay. Let me back out for a minute. You've talked about live fire quite a bit. Do you know what dry fire means?
I do.
What is that?
So it's manipulating or handling the firearm without any source of ammunition present. So the gun is empty of any rounds.
Okay. Why do you do dry fire?
For various reasons. It's easy, it's cheap, not any cartridges or ammunition through it. And you're building repetitions, so you're instilling movements and habits that you will do once you go to live fire.
Okay. Is there a safety factor involved?
Yeah, you're handling the weapon platform without any ammunition.
Okay. What did Mr. Bellar teach that day?
Combination of the medical lane is what he predominantly stayed with. Tourniquets.
Okay, and again, this is, training is being hosted on the property where Mr. Morrison, and Mr. Musico are providing the location to train.
Objection.
Fair summary?
Mischaracterization of evidence. Your
How is that mischaracterized?
Been no testimony that Mr. Musical is providing the location. All the testimony's been that he resides there. There's been no testimony that he sent out any invitation, anything to provide.
It's his property, right?
No,
Or he's renting it?
something I think we'll get there later, but
Overruled, I don't, go ahead.
Overruled, Judge.
Yes,
Thank you. And this is the property that Mr. Morrison, Mr. Musico provided for the trainings thus far, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. And again, Mr. Bellar is there teaching the different, the medical and also some of the tactics that you've described. Is that right?
That's correct.
Oh, 266, please. Thank you. He's already been a better judge. Play this for you, Dan, and then I'll ask you a couple of questions, okay?
We can do it after. Yeah, okay. No, I totally agree with you on that. Just, we gotta get everybody's on the same book, we just gotta get everybody on the same book.
You heard Mr. Morrison talking about that, right?
I do, yes.
Okay, and can you give the jury some context of what he was talking about?
With Adam pertaining to the Boogaloo movement.
This is a conversation with Mr. Fox on the telephone, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and you mentioned about this meeting in Dublin, correct?
Yes.
And that whether there was some discussion about whether to go, and Mr. Croft was sponsoring a meeting with multiple state members, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this conversation takes place after the leadership meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury when this conversation takes place relative to the mandatory attendance FTX?
This conversation with Adam
Yeah,
during the training.
okay. Now, I didn't hear any gunshots going off in that recording. I mean, has the training stopped or other members still participating?
We called it ceasefire. So don't call it ceasefire for everybody to stop shooting. So that
Your Honor, can I just get a little clarification? Are we past the leadership meeting on June 3rd and we're now at the training on June 14th when the phone call is made to Adam Fox and also who's present?
yes, Your Honor.
So this is June 14th.
Yes.
And who's present?
Myself, Joe, Daniel Harris, Ty Garvin.
Thank you.
The was there any discussion or any statement by Morrison about Facebook and adding people and having people add Mr. Fox to Facebook?
That I would reach out to Adam and add him on Facebook.
Okay, and Showing the witness, proposed exhibit 267, the transcript. Sure. Come back to that in a minute, Judge.
Fine.
Let's talk a little bit about the property there at Dunn Road. And did you have authority to invite people to training there?
No, that was done through Joe.
Okay. And did anybody besides Joe have authority to invite people to training?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Um, You heard Adam Fox's voice on the phone that day, correct?
I did, yes.
And what had been explained to you about who Adam Fox was?
He's the real deal. He had some things about kicking off, about putting rifles in police officer trigger.
Who told you that?
Pete did.
Okay. When's the first time you meet Mr. Fox?
June 18th, in a protest.
Okay. And before you meet him, is there any explanation given to you about his connection with Barry Croft?
That he went to the Dublin meeting and Barry appointed him Michigan's contact for the national movement.
Okay. Where are you when you first meet Mr. Fox?
At the protest.
And would that be at our Capitol?
Yes,
Okay. Now do you remember the date of this?
June 18th.
Okay. And when you meet him, how is he dressed?
Tactical matter. So he has his Hawaiian shirt on, kit, long gun.
Okay. Tell us about that introduction. Tell the jury how that happened and what occurred.
So Joe introduced us to Adam and he did kind of like the handshake, but like brought me in, patted my back and then pat down feeling me up a little bit.
Okay. This is a person you never met before, right?
First time.
And you have a recording device that day?
I did.
How'd that make you feel?
A little uneasy, like he's searching for a wire.
Okay. Showing you. Right. What you think? Wait, please, I'm sorry.
Why do you guys?
One 22.
Before you back to the, I'm sorry, yeah, you take it back. There you go, that's fine. You recognize anybody in this video here?
I do.
Can you tell us who?
So from our left, that's Adam Fox with the white ball cap and Hawaiian shirt. Joe Morrison with the red Hawaiian shirt and body armor. It's Amanda Keller, Adam's girlfriend. With the ball cap facing Amanda, that's Ty Garvin. And then Pete Musico with the green and blue Hawaiian shirt with body armor.
Go ahead and play the rest of it. Thank you. Okay. Were you there when that reporter approached the group or no?
I was directly to our left of Adam.
Did you believe Mr. Fox's statement about the shirt being just a shirt?
No,
Did you see the shirt as being symbolic of something?
it's the Boogaloo movement, yes.
In terms of, did you hear Mr. Fox talking at all that day about entering the Capitol?
He explained that he wants to storm the Capitol, take hostages. If responding police officers show up, they'll hopefully get reinforcements to show up to the Capitol, and that they would not be walking out of there.
Okay, was Mr., in terms of who people attending this protest, I pointed out Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musico, was Mr. Bellar there for the protest?
He was, yes.
Okay, were they within earshot of Mr. Fox when he was talking about these things?
They were, yes.
Did Mr. Musico have any thoughts about that idea of storming the Capitol that day that you remember?
He did express that every building around there was armed and that this was a fishbowl.
How long does that protest last, Dan? I should say, how long are you doing?
Maybe an hour or two.
Okay. I want to move forward in time if I could. When is the next time that you see or meet with Mr. Fox?
That's Saturday.
Would they, the week with the protest, if I could ask?
I believe Thursday
Okay. And where do you meet him at?
at the Back Shack in Grand Rapids.
Who do you meet besides you and Mr. Fox? Who is there?
Ty Garvin rode with me. Paul met us up there. And then Amanda Keller and another individual that Adam had there was present.
You know that person's name today?
Macintosh, I believe it was his last name.
Okay. While you're there, has the recording device, do you have a recording device?
I do.
Okay, and how many do you have in fact?
At that point too.
Okay, is that the first time you're using a primary and a secondary device?
Obviously, yes.
Hey, do you remember the reason why a second device was added at that point in time?
For overlapping coverage.
Okay, the operational security you described that they were doing was bad, is that correct?
Yes, they were gathering phones. They didn't want phones present on the Munith property. And then with gathering of that up.
When you get to this meeting, you said Mr. Bellar drove separately, is that right?
He did, yes.
And this meeting is held in what city?
Grand Rapids.
And again, it's at the Back Shack where Mr. Fox worked and occasionally resided.
That's correct.
Okay. Was any OPSEC, operational security, employed by Mr. Fox during this meeting?
Yes, he did. He gathered everybody's cell phones up and put them in
Okay. Where was the meeting held at?
in the basement. So you had to travel towards the back side of the building where you would come through their doors and open up a door much like here. And then on the floor was like a trap door. You would open up a sheet of plywood and travel down through the stairs.
Okay. You had not been there before, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you have another recording device when you went down the stairs?
I had both, yes.
Okay. And you said that he collected cell phones, is that right?
Did.
Did you give him a cell phone to collect,
I gave him my cell phone, yes.
your personal cell phone?
I did,
The other cell phone that you had, where did you get that from?
at the FBI.
A recording device and a listening device?
Correct.
What's the, how did you know to go to this meeting? What drew you to Grand Rapids? How did you know?
Digging back to the 14th, that was supposed to be, the June 14th was getting together with Adam for a meeting, kind of had a hasty one at the Capitol. Adam invited us to come to Grand Rapids, bringing him ideas.
Okay. Did you agree to go?
I did.
Okay. Any discussion with Mr. Beller before you got there?
As far as-
Just anything like, what we're gonna do when we get there, any kind of game plan, and we don't really know this guy, we haven't been there before, any discussion about that?
There was discussion about what we would be doing or who would all be going.
Okay,
That was about the gist of that.
so when you got there, you go downstairs,
I do, yes.
okay? Tell us what ideas Mr. Fox brings to the meeting.
He expressed that his initial plan of storming the Capitol and taking people there was a bit over the top. And he wanted us to go over ideas that he instructed us to bring to him for that meeting.
What other ideas, were discussed there?
One gentleman brought up getting like an arrest warrant for the governor. Paul made the statement of a domino effect, saying she goes, takes the policy.
Did you later learn a little bit about Barry Croft's ideas?
Gathering everybody up for the boot movement, yes.
Multiple state action at the same time?
Yes.
Okay. Did Mr. Fox talk about the timing of when he wanted to launch, an attack?
They wanted it before the election was held.
Okay. And bring up 281 from Zeno. I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Play this for you here, Dan, and I'll ask you a few questions, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
So like what notion number are we gonna need? You mentioned 1,400. I'm bringing that a lot, man. 200 seems like a suicide mission in the capital right now. We got to fucking cover the entry point.
They're gonna come and form us. We need somebody behind that.
If we had 1,000 men, we could do it. We could send 300 men in the capital to seize it and take their hostages and charge them in charge. And then we could have, let them fucking stack up on us, and then we can have the other 700 roll in. We can have slackers from buildings, from apartments and shit. We could do the same fucking thing we do, we could outplay their game and have them out fucking efficient and everything. But we don't have the detail. We need the actual men to step up, willing to fucking go do this.
Paul Bellar is sitting in the same room as Adam Fox when Mr. Fox makes those statements. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Does Mr. Bellar have any objection to these ideas of Mr. Fox?
He does not know.
Okay, is he in fact in agreement with them?
Yes.
Dan, I'm gonna play another clip and I'll ask you a couple more questions, okay?
I tell you one thing, that taking capital would be a big fucking job. It would require a lot more fucking people because that is a huge building. There's a lot of hits and fucking out, not to mention for over there every month.
Do you think NHG?
I think we need to start, like, when we go there, like, just kind of doing our little tour thing, you know, like, just kind of getting to know it. Falling going on a tour. Just go up and go walk through there and act like you're being there, you know? Right.
Like I wonder how you would come out there and train, like all you guys. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we can get, I mean, one other thing we do is to keep us somebody don't go into their houses and shit, like,
Again, Mr. Bellar is down in the basement, is that right?
Yes, yes.
And Mr. Fox is making these statements.
Yes.
Any objections by Mr. Bellar to any of these ideas other than that maybe they're tactically unsound?
Fair to say yes.
280, please. Play a third clip here, Dan, and I'll ask you a couple more questions, okay?
We need to start linking up these groups. If you're gonna go for the capital, we need people inside. So you need people that like work at the local businesses, right? That are seeing and planning every single day. You need people on the ground before it even comes time.
Again, groups all together down in the basement. Mr. Garvin and is making these statements. Is that correct? Okay. During the meeting, after the meeting, any time that you knew Mr. Bellar, I mean, did he have any objections to the violence aspect of what Mr. Fox was suggesting?
Not at all.
Play this for you, Dan, and then we'll ask you a couple more questions, okay?
There's so many strategies. I mean, there's so many things in Ohio. Some of them pretty far fetched in the stream off the island, but I mean, there's things that we can do. There's things we can do to level what's happening to playing field. Even amongst like 6 chaos and the fucking riot and shit, you know, like we can use that to our fucking advantage while they're all dealing with that shit. And that's all going on, and it's all this rioting shit. That takes them out of the fucking fight. We take the fucking state.
Like, okay, video of the black guy that was talking about.
No, that's the thing, you know, there's opportunity, you know, like fucking chaos, dude, and we just go there and do our little mission. Get the fuck out, and then that takes away from their resources, right? Now they don't have the cars to be out there, like, little things like that, you can implement time to strategically play along until we can fucking do this. But amongst all this chaos, like, there is a lot of fucking opportunity for us to further what we're trying to do.
Again, that's at the Vac Shack, is that correct?
That's correct.
Paul Bellar is present for that.
Yes.
Like to turn to the 28th of June. Was there a FTX or a field training exercise that day?
There was, yes,
Where was it held?
at the Munith.
You know, this is immediately, or not immediately, but this is only days after, 8 days after the meeting at the back shack and what we just heard, correct?
That's correct.
Joe Morrison there,
Yes,
Pete Musico at this training.
yes,
They've opened their property up for the training, is that correct?
they have, yes,
Does Paul Bellar attend?
he does,
Okay, and this is after he spent the meeting at a time in the back shack with Adam Fox, is that correct?
Correct.
Heard Adam Fox's ideas, right?
yes.
Okay, and by the way, was Adam Fox smoking marijuana down in the meeting at the back shack?
He did, yes.
Okay, anybody else down there smoking marijuana?
Amanda might have,
Okay, Paul Bellar smoke any?
No.
Okay, did you?
no,
Okay. Did it appear this was the first time Mr. Fox had enjoyed smoking marijuana?
no,
Okay, after he smoked marijuana, did his speech get slurred, or did he wonder who you were? Did he act bizarre in any way?
no.
Okay. So 8 days later, after the back shack, and this FTX out on Dunn Road in Munith, said all the defendants are present, correct?
They are, yes,
Are they all armed that day?
yes.
Okay. How is Mr. Morrison armed?
It's with kid on, so tactical matter.
Does he have a long gun?
Yes,
Does he have a pistol or a sidearm?
can't recall if he had one on that day or not.
Okay, how about Mr. Musico? Is he armed during the training that day?
He is, yes,
How is he armed?
the same manner, with kid, long gun.
Do you recall if he had a pistol that day?
No, I know he had various other weapons on him, but a pistol, no.
In terms of firearms, that day on the 28th, besides the long gun that Mr. Musico had, do you know if he had any other firearms on?
No,
Mr. Bellar that day, was he armed during the training?
he was, yes.
How was he armed?
Same fashion, kid, long gun, and a secondary.
So you do remember Mr. Bellar also having his pistol that day,
Yes.
okay? And tell us, if you will, did Mr. Fox attend training that day?
He did, yes.
How did he get to the property?
We met him at an off-site location, a gas station, I believe.
Who's we?
Myself, Ty, and Joe. We took my
Okay.
vehicle and met Adam.
Okay, and when you picked, did you pick him up or did he follow you back to the Dunn Road?
They followed us back. There was, I believe, 2 other vehicles that was present with Adam.
What was the point, if you know, of going to meet Adam Fox at the gas station?
Jada and Joe had contacted me about pertaining to Adam showing up to the training. And Adam had been putting the address of their residence online, and he was performing poor OPSEC. So they wanted to meet him at an offsite and put a cover over his head so they couldn't see how to get.
Was that actually done?
No.
Okay. Mr. Fox comes back to the Dunn Road property where Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musico reside, correct?
That's correct.
This is the place the training is happening this day, is that right?
Correct.
All 3 defendants are now back at the property, is that right?
They are, yes.
They're all 3 armed with guns, is that right?
Correct.
Does Mr. Fox get trained that day?
He does, yes.
Okay, you tell the jury a little bit about some of the training that you observed Mr. Fox go through 28th of June out on Dunn Road.
There was 2 separate stations set up, a medical trauma lane and then a vehicle assault and ambush lane.
Who was teaching the medical trauma lane, as you put it?
Paul was.
How long was Mr. Fox in that training lane?
About a half hour, 45 minutes.
Okay, what kind of things was Mr. Bellar teaching that day?
So self-aid body aid again, treating gunshot wounds or shrapnel wounds, applying tourniquets, sucking chest wounds, things of that nature.
Okay. Did any of the training that Mr. Bellar provide, like, did he provide anything like, like a drowning victim, or if somebody is drowning, how to help them, or if somebody's been severely burned in a home fire, or things like, things that you might learn at the Red Cross, any type of training like that going on?
No.
Okay. Was this all combat related medical that Mr. Bellar was teaching?
Yes.
Okay. How many recording devices did you have that day?
We've had 2 live feed and a recording device.
Was there OPSEC or operational security used by the Wolverine Watchman that day?
There was, yes.
Tell the jury about that, please.
Joe had put out that we had a VIP coming to the group, so that was a reference of Adam. There was a standing order of not having phones on ourselves while we were there. They didn't say it. Felt the risk. Order. Over the live feed.
Okay, put the phone listening device in your vehicle. You're down to 1 recording device now, is that correct? How was it your responsibility? Did you have to turn it on and off?
For the recording device, yes, and I thought that it was turned on, yes.
And did you do your best to follow the instructions that was given to you by Henrik and Bula to turn the thing on?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you come to learn later that it didn't operate?
I did, yes.
Okay. How long did this training last, Dan?
Again, several hours, the exact time. I'm not paying attention to the time while I'm with the individual.
Was there any, and you described the medical lane, and can you describe the other types of training that Mr. Fox went through while he was there?
So there was the medical and then the vehicle assault, and then we had an ambush lane. Ty Garvin and myself were conducting operations, so people would cycle through from the medical trauma and then come over to the vehicle. And
In the 3rd lane, I think you said was ambush training.
that's correct.
Okay, and what was Mr. Morrison doing during this training that day?
He was going from the training and up to Jaden and himself were having a bit of a conflict going on. So they were having discussions throughout.
Okay, did he participate in the training, Mr. Morrison?
He did.
How about Mr. Musico? Did he participate in the training?
He did as well.
Okay. Dan, during the training out there on the 28th, when Mr. Fox attended, was there any discussion about Barry Croft?
That he was the national contact that was together the national movement.
Okay, and was there any discussion about explosives?
There was, yes, I can't recall the amount of depth that it went forth though.
Okay, fair enough. Was there any discussion about Cambria, Wisconsin at that point in time?
There was, yes. There was going to be a national FTX training, so field training and exercise that was going to be conducted by the various states that are making up the national movement for the Boogaloo movement.
Okay, who brought Cambria up on this FTX?
Adam talked briefly about it. Can't recall if other members of the group put it out or not.
Did Adam Fox also talk about it during the back shack meeting?
He did. He invited myself, Ty, and Paul to go to training there.
Okay, did Paul go?
He did.
Okay, and I'll get to that in a moment.
Let's.
While you're there, at the 628 training out at Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musicos, does there any discussion about the anarchist cookbook?
There was, yes. Peter brought that up.
Okay, tell the jury about that and what piece.
Up to the anarchist cookbook itself, it's various forms like booty traps, things that you can make explosives through and of that nature.
Okay. I'm sorry if I've already answered this, but was Cambria discussed at the FTX also?
It was, yes.
Who brought that up?
Again, I believe Adam brought it up again.
Okay. I mean, what I'd like to kind of convey to the jury, in what way was he bringing it up? Was he just talking about it, or was he suggesting something?
He was suggesting that the Wolverine Watchmen team contribute or show up to the training that was conducted out there.
Okay. In terms of the training that Mr. Fox got here on June 28th, out at Mr. Morrison and Mr. Musico's place, I mean, was there any commentary by him? Was he appreciative? Did he have any viewpoint on the quality of it?
He liked it. He felt that it could have been more, but it was going in the direction of the movement.
Yeah, I mean, did Mr. Fox leave early or anything? Or
No, he did not.
did he participate full FTX?
He did.
Okay. What time did the FTX end?
Late afternoon, maybe around 4 or 5.
Okay. Dan, I'd like to move now to the next month, July the 20th. Talk a little bit about what happened during, rather July 2020. I'd like to talk a little bit about what happened during that month now. Remember a meeting at Mr. Bellar's on the 7th of July?
Yes.
Did you go?
He did.
Why did you go there?
He asked if I would go. He was creating his ghost crew.
Okay, let's back out a little bit. Prior to this meeting, Mr. Bellar's, had you seen any disagreements or conflict between Mr. Bellar and either Mr. Joe Morrison or his wife Jada?
I did, yes.
Tell the jury about that, please.
So on the 28th training, Paul had brought his girlfriend to the training exercise. Jada did not like that. It was supposed to be an all like men exclusive training. And she was very displeased with that. Paul felt that he said that Jada had Joe's fault first. Controlling he was creating his own. Paul was creating his own group.
Okay. Was that a bit of a scene on the 28th? I mean,
Yes, Paul said it was very unprofessional of how Jada was acting and talking to Joe with everybody that was present, including the VIP of Adam.
Okay. What time of the day did the meeting happen at Mr. Bellar's, this ghost group meeting?
Later afternoon,
Okay. Who attended?
myself, Paul, his girlfriend, Caleb Franks, Daniel Harris, Walkoff, Gerald Bouchard, and there might have been a couple other members from the Wolverine Watchman that he was pulling from.
For the people you just described, are regular attendees at the Wolverine Watchman FTXs out on Dunn Road.
They were, yes.
Okay. And in fact, were these some of the better operators, so to speak?
They were, yes.
Okay. And these are the people that Mr. Bellar invited to his place, is that right?
Correct.
Talk about forming a new group,
The shadow group, yes.
okay? And were QRFs just, talked about,
That was, yes.
okay? And who brought that up?
Paul did.
Okay, and what's your memory of what Paul's vision was for this ghost group?
That it was a QRF group, so responding to the individuals. He stated that he through text, so the Watchman had Adam, there was communication between Adam and Joe that Paul had left the group. Paul stated that he had reached out to Adam. So part of the movement, this is a QRF, like a defensive group that would be a low profile and a low social media presence. He didn't want to have any kind of more pictures taken, not go into protests, much like how the Wolverine Watchman was.
Okay. You've been on 3 QRF deployments with Mr. Bellar at this point in time, correct?
I have.
Did anything about those deployments seem defensive to you?
No, and even an initial QRF, coming from a military standpoint, is the moment you leave your staging area, you are becoming the aggressors. You are going out to an element that is in contact with whatever kind of forces that they are, and they're in a gunfight, and you're reinforcing them. So you're a violent to action.
And I mean, did Mr. Bellar, during the course of this meeting in his home, and when he described it, he was going to form a defensive group, right?
That's correct.
Do those terms conflict in your mind?
Yes.
Council, about noon, we'll break till 1:15.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, for the jury.
Well, I'm just letting you know, I don't care.